Hello, my name is BlehBlah. I should have chosen a better username, and I love Spelunky. Since I first played it in the early to mid 2010s, Spelunky HD has been a game that I continually played on and off, one that I could always come back to, whether it be alone or with friends. It is a game that was an infinite well of fun, one that I don't really have a single problem with, one of my favorite games. So how do you improve on perfection? When Spelunky 2 was announced, I really had no idea how it would be done. Yes, new content was shown immediately, but how could the game not just feel like more of the same? It would need to feel fresh, and my younger gamer brain had no clue how that would happen. But I was still incredibly excited. Perhaps I would have even been fine if it was just more Spelunky, but it wasn't. Through both its visual and game design, Spelunky 2 has created an experience that I enjoy far more than HD. As I saw it in the reveal trailer, I was not a fan of the simpler, lower contrast art style of the levels in Spelunky 2. As it turns out, though, I'm a big dumb idiot asshole because the improved visual style is one of the biggest improvements Spelunky 2 makes over HD. And it's not just everything being freaking adorable. Because of the blocky nature of the level design, Spelunky has always been easy to scan and flow your way through, and the gentler level art lends to these qualities incredibly well. This always complemented player movement, the jump height, whipping, and ledge grabbing, for example, being simpled and considered so that they mechanically relate with how the level looks, such as how the basic jump visually raises the player one block, creating a relation between the visuals and gameplay that makes it easier for the player to read a level and quickly understand how they might approach it. With only a glance, the level geometry can be quickly comprehended, and the consistent, simple player mechanics gel with this to allow platforming and exploration in Spelunky 2 to become more fast-paced and flowing than ever. The concise simplicity in this area of Spelunky 2 allows for focus to be further placed on the game's mechanics and the decisions that they create. Spelunky 2 provides abundant mechanics, hazards, and items compared to HD that are all relatively simple to understand, yet are largely game-changing at the same time, many of which the player will not interact with in the scope of a single run to preserve their simplicity and not overwhelm. Instead, it is in the way these aspects of the game interact and connect with each other that results in the plentiful and creative ways that Spelunky 2 can be played, which creates the depthful moment-to-moment decision-making that gives Spelunky its exciting gameplay. The player is constantly presented with new and varied randomly generated challenges they must overcome with a combination of their technical skill, creative application of game mechanics, and thoughtful choices of what approach will work best, and Spelunky 2 expands on this area of HD greatly. New level designs, enemies, and level hazards place the player in a large variety of situations, and new items create expanded approaches for the player to take when confronting these situations. Even a single new item like the hover pack has one very simple function, yet opens up several new options for how any challenge in the game might be approached moment to moment. With level geometry, enemies, and the other items the player has, this one item interacts with the game in such a way that it can completely shift how one makes choices in their run. Similarly to how these new items bolster the moment-to-moment decision-making, additions were made to deepen the choices made in the long term as well. In the other Spelunky games, long-term decisions generally took the form of the spending and management of resources in the bombs, ropes, money, and health. The player must balance these resources while considering the short and long-term risks and rewards of their choices. And a new risk-reward concept is introduced in the mounts, who present a short-term risk of placing the player in danger to befriend them, and the turkeys can also give health if the player is willing to expend a bomb and their morals. However, they can present the long-term reward of giving the player greatly increased movement and offense as long as they are kept alive. But the addition that deepens the long-term choices made in Spelunky 2 the furthest is the path-making system, where the player is able to choose between multiple worlds to play when entering Worlds 2 and 3. Planning ahead in a run is no longer a solely linear affair, and this expands the way a player who wishes to have the best run possible mentally engages with the longer-term decision-making of Spelunky to an even greater degree. As the worlds have many separate hazards, mechanics, resources, and items, planning ahead for where you want to go and how to get there adds a depth that is incredibly rewarding to master, but not something the player needs to succeed. keeping things uncomplicated, the system adding an extra bit of variety to the player who is uninterested in planning ahead. Okay, so I'm gonna do something kinda wacky, kinda quirky, kinda silly, and mention the story. This is a goofy decision because this game has like 5 minutes of narrative at the start and nothing else, which is straightforward and not very interesting to most. However, it was impactful to myself personally, and I can't disregard that. It consists of the characters from the first game retiring, getting older, having kids, yet still, in spite of these things, being called back to adventure and enjoying their time doing so. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt connected to this, as I feel it paralleled my experience with Spelunky and the place its sequel had found in my life. It has been many years since HD, and in those years the game has entered and left my life several times, while still remaining one of my favorites. Just as Spelunky 2's characters did, I felt the time that had passed, I felt the return, and I felt the happiness of having something I love come back to me, improved and new. Spelunky 2 is the reappearance of an old friend. The last couple years have felt like a slow build to an inevitable, frightening change in my own life, and obviously the world being flipped on its head hasn't helped much with that. But in this past year, many different forms of media I once held such an adoration for have found their ways back into my life in weird and amazing ways that have really helped keep me grounded in this time of immense change. Through its narrative, Spelunky 2 stands as an example of media's ability to return into life and become just as important as it always was. Through this, I've realized that no matter where I am, what I'm doing, or when it is, it can always be time for just one more run. Hi again, we're in outro mode now. If you made it this far in the video, I'd really like to thank you for watching, I really appreciate it. I've had script ideas rattling around in my head since around April, and the first 2 weeks of August have been spent learning how to record voice and gameplay as well as video edit. Since it's my first time learning to do all this, it's definitely a little rough, but it means a lot to me and I'm proud of what I was able to make. All the songs used in this video are from the Spelunky games, and they're listed in the description. The footage is primarily from the Spelunky games also, obviously, but the media shown in the little montage at the end can also be found in the description. This was really creatively satisfying, so I'd definitely like to try it again sometime. So maybe like and subscribe if you want, and maybe I'll see you around.